Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. I feel like householder is a derogatory term in a lot of early Buddhist literature. Like, how familiar with the term were you when I proposed that we call the show that?
I didn't relate it to Zen.
I see.
I didn't know how it related to Zen.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess in the fact that we're lay practitioners, but I didn't know how, if other people had talked about it.
Well, so the reason I wanted to use it is because in the sutras, it's kind of the opposite of monk. I'm talking about the Pali Canon and like the sort of very formal early Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Householders are people who don't get it because they're not.
Yeah, they don't practice.
Yeah. And so there have been so many revolutions in the history of Buddhism about bringing in lay people. And by the time Zen made it to us, to our generation, or even the generation of our teacher, it was a pretty normal idea that people with jobs and families and lives and stuff would practice Zen.
Mm-hmm.
But it still feels like a very unsolved problem to me about how exactly it works. Because I think that the generation before us really, like this actually, I mean, maybe this is two generations before us, the people who were in their 30s in the 60s and 70s who were doing hardcore Zen practice in America for the first time, the as I understand it from talking to people and from reading about it, the vibe was really like Zen and your family are in conflict with each other. Like, in order to do Zen in those days and in those lineages, you had to do long retreats all the time. You had to sit for hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And people used it as a form of almost escape from their householder responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, even Siddhartha, when you think about it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, he left his wife and family and his duties.
Right. And that's the sense in which the word householder is used in a pejorative sense in the early Buddhist scriptures. And like sort of the nicest it ever gets about it that I mean, obviously there are counterexamples and there's whole like sutras about how wonderful householders are. You know, like people have realized this many times throughout Buddhist history and have tried to come up with ways for people who aren't monks to practice the Dharma. But there are so many instances in classical Buddhist texts where it's like even a householder can understand that, you know, this practice is important or this practice works or does this or that. You know, they're seen as sort of like half Buddhists by a certain kind of monastic flavor of Buddhism. And obviously, you know, the vast majority of Buddhists ever have been householders. But, you know, there's still this sort of worship of the monk ideal as
well, it seems like you
practice.
could reach nirvana faster if you're just meditating more.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Faster. Yes. You attain the thing that you somehow don't have if you work on it more.
The thing that you're not supposed to want to attain.
Right. So. Exactly. But the reason I wanted to do this whole investigation of the idea of householders is that, you know, Zen teaches in so many ways how everyday life is practice and that practice and everyday life are continuous with each other. And I put those teachings together with something I might have said on the show already. I can't remember. That sensei said right when my second daughter was about to be born. He said, that baby's going to be your Zen teacher now.
Yes.
And, you know, I thought he was just sort of saying that. And maybe to him, he was just saying that. But what I realized immediately is that since I was primed to see it that way, I was doing so much more intensive practice in the situations where it was stressful, you know, handling household or stuff. I mean, specifically like situations where the baby's freaking out and I don't know what to do. Like that practice is so much more intense.
Oh yeah.
Than my sitting practice, which has become a sort of relaxing thing, as I mentioned. As serious as I am about it, as rigorous as I do it, you know, there's nothing like a crying baby to show you like the true nature of what we are and teach you how to be with it.
Absolutely.
And so now my whole shtick is like domesticity is the new monasticism. Like, this is monastic. The way that I have to be so on as a dad of little kids and taking care of a house, all the time, and like balancing work with it and balancing personal practice and development and creativity and leisure and all that stuff, balancing it all. Like, there's so much to do.
Yeah.
And it has to all be Zen practice. And so I'm not saying that it's the same as it being a monk, but I'm saying that it's certainly just as hard.
Sometimes harder. I mean, it's
Yeah.
constantly being put to the test whether we can, retain our Buddha nature while in these tough situations. And I don't know what kind of tough situations monks are in. They have to sit for long periods of time, and that is very tough.
But then there's also like cleaning and cooking. Yes, crying babies are not things that monks have to deal with, but cleaning and cooking as this like refined Zen practice, that's what I'm doing half the time.
Oh yeah.
And it's no different. And so, somebody's doing that in the house, and usually they're doing it so that somebody else can do something else, and it's all just about keeping the place running. And that's what monastic work is too. They have a monastery to keep running. So I think it's the same thing. I don't want to get into whether one is harder than the other, but like what hard is the point, I think, is what I fundamentally want to say, is like life is hard and Zen is for practicing doing things that are hard.
Absolutely.
So like, what's hard for you about day-to-day life, and how is it Zen practice?
You're saying that your children are probably some of your biggest Zen teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's just my disability that has made me the most mindful of my existence. I was diagnosed with lupus at 22, and I had been sick like a long time before that. It just took that long to actually get the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And I was already very, very sick by that point. And I ended up in the hospital for 10 days, and to the point where I was like slowly dying. And they were like, if you hadn't made it to the hospital, you would have had like 3 months to live, probably.
Oh my God.
So, as a 22-year-old, I think during that time, you're really all about wanting to party and, experience life in like a kind of a rigorous, a more, I don't know, risky way. And I kind of never got to do that. I always had to be like, at that point, I'm like, how am I going to get better? Because I don't think I can do everything that other people my age can. And I still can't. But it turns out that this is a pretty good existence too, when you can turn it into a Zen practice. So regular everyday life, like I did eventually sort of get better from lupus. It's not in complete remission. It was just such a severe form that I don't think it ever will go into remission. But it's good enough. And from that, I also had another illness where I have several bones in my body that are dead, and they cause me a lot of pain every day. There were times where I was using a wheelchair, and I would go into the Zendo with crutches, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. But eventually I learned how to manage the pain, and Zen had a huge impact on me being able to do that. So when you have like the Zen practice, it's made me so much more like mindful of like what causes me pain and how much I can control, or how much I can handle, how much physical activity I can handle, how much like emotional stress I can handle, because emotional stress can cause pain too. People don't really think about it that way, but if you're under stress, like, and you have a condition that causes like that inflammation can cause pain in your body, it will get worse the more stress you're under. So I'm always constantly on alert for like how much stress I'm under, if I'm eating correctly, did I get enough sleep? Am I balancing my mental health correctly? And always being aware of that, I feel like has been my biggest Zen teacher, because I have to work so hard just to be close to what everybody else feels like regularly.
This isn't a very Zen word to use, but it sounds like there's a lot of mindfulness practice involved in managing this is
Yeah.
like, and you use the word awareness.
I think that when you're practicing Zen meditation, you become aware of what's going on in your body and with your emotions and with your surroundings more than you are on, in your regular everyday life, because you are finally stopping and actually feeling what's going on. And I think that there's a lot of people who actually have illnesses that they don't know about because they keep themselves busy so much and keep their mind distracted that they are not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you become aware of it, it becomes easier to help yourself with it, help to balance it, help to balance your life. And it's very difficult because it just takes so much of your headspace.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's what I mean by awareness.
Yeah, thank you. Surely your pain or your difficulties are coming up for you in various episodes throughout the day, like some specific thing you have to do, or like it, or it just comes up and it interrupts whatever's happening. Because I can imagine, having trouble moving around, like that as an example would create like an obstacle course of stuff that has to happen. Like getting the laundry isn't just going and getting the laundry. There's like this whole maze of things you probably have to do.
Exactly. Thank you. That's just saying that like makes me feel validated. It's hard to explain to people that yes, just doing the laundry is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I want so bad to be like everybody else. So not really. I just mean like I want to be able to do the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to do those things, just it requires so much thought and so much patience that it comes back so much. So like cooking, I cook 3 times a week probably, if you don't count lunch, because I make these little like sautés in a bag things you can get at Kroger, which are great. It's not even just the cooking that I know is going to take like physical exertion and energy to do, but I also have to do it because I need to be in charge of what's going in my body, because I know that will affect how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, every time I do something throughout the day, if I don't do it with that sort of Zen mind, then I kind of risk getting off balance in some kind of way.
So there's like a Zen preparation for doing the thing too. It's not just like in the middle of it. It's like you have to kind of center yourself before you go into that situation.
I think that I have to think about it. Right. I have to kind of center myself before I do it. And then while you're doing it, you also have to be mindful, because you might need to I might need to take a break. Might need to stop chopping because actually one of the dead bones is in my wrist. So like cooking can be very difficult because of the chopping. If you're not aware, if I'm not aware, I know I say it like you, like I'm sure there's other people like me. So I guess that's why I'm saying it like that. You, as in the people with disabilities or physical ailments of any kind or emotional ailments, have to be aware of what you're doing at all times. And if you're not, then you could injure yourself in some way, form, or another.
When you do dedicated Zen practice, Zazen practice, or any of the Zen forms, does it ever get difficult to approach the pain or this ongoing challenge from that place of stopping and dropping everything? Like, do you ever want it? I could imagine just sitting in Zazen and just not wanting it to be there, but it's there. Is that ever a thing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sensei is great about like allowing me to use chairs. Again, so the dead bone thing is really hard for me to explain. It sounds like I just made it up, but anyway, it's called avascular necrosis. And I don't really know how I got it exactly. Could because lupus, could because I was on a lot of steroids for like 5 or 6 years to fix the lupus. They don't really know, but it's very widespread, and my knees are the biggest area that it has most of the dead bone, which what I mean by dead bone is like there's not circulation in that bone area. I guess the bone's still there. It's not like doing anything besides just hurting a whole lot. Um, but when I sit cross-legged, especially for long periods of time, that can be very painful. And on one hand, I have to think, am I hurting myself? Am I making this worse? Or is this a part of practice? So sometimes I decide, no, I need to go sit in a chair. I don't want to hurt my knees anymore. And sometimes I can sit cross-legged and it's not a big problem.
I think that's one of the most important kinds of physical discernment in Zen practice for anyone. You know, the knees are always the thing that goes for anybody who does Zen practice. And I think one of the things that's often taught, and surely taught in a very unintentionally maybe, but nevertheless ableist way about that pain, is that the teacher will often say, it's your responsibility to sit with that pain and use discernment to figure out whether it's just resistance to feeling pain or whether it's an actual warning that something is not right and your body should be adjusted. And you know, the Zen admonition is often just don't move.
Yeah, and that could be kind of embarrassing for me because I feel like my threshold of how long I can stay without moving is probably a little smaller than most people's, unless you do also have a knee problem or a hip problem or something, and then maybe you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, but I still have like, so I've had my periods of time of really having trouble sitting in the posture on retreat, and having to learn lessons about being compassionate with my body. And it has really been teachers' jobs to, well, it hasn't been their job, but the teachers have been the ones who showed me where I was being too severe or not, or using some mental construct of needing to do something instead of listening to my body. And, you know, some of the pressure I felt also had to do with conformity. I felt like I had to be sitting like everyone else. And I'm sure that is extra hard for you, but it sounds like Sensei also makes the space accommodate that for you in a way that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. What you were saying, compassion is the perfect word for it, and I think Sensei is compassionate about, you know, there's a lot of elderly people that go to the Zendo too.
Yeah.
And I think you have to acknowledge that not everybody's, you know, a young, healthy person.
Yeah.
And I have to acknowledge that about myself too, and be compassionate, like you said, be compassionate to yourself. And I think your Zen practice can really teach you how to be compassionate to yourself and others.
It sounds like there's a Zen teacher, a non-human Zen teacher in there teaching you lessons somewhere.
Yes.
It probably is too cute to say like your pain is your teacher or something.
Well, pain sounds like a mean thing. I don't think that my body's trying to do anything mean to me in a way. Like, you know, when you become compassionate towards your body, then you learn not to blame it for being in pain in the first place. But yeah, I don't know. Pain is sort of like a negative connotation, but I don't think that it has to be. Sometimes I think of it a lot like cold or hot. I hate being cold. It's really uncomfortable. Also, that makes my joints hurt too. But even if it didn't, the act of being cold is very uncomfortable. But I guess it could be so cold that you're painful. Maybe not in Georgia, but in some places it could be painful. But just really, you think about it as uncomfortable. I think that maybe if we can, you know, realign our mind to not think of pain as a bad thing in the first place, or at least not, or just it is what it is. It's an alarm of some sort. It's trying to tell you something, and we can listen to that and maybe not, you know, take it to the degree where we are letting it rule everything that we do, because that's not good either. If I let it do that, then I wouldn't exercise, and actually exercising has made my my muscles stronger where I can handle the pain more. At least that's what Zen has taught me, and what having the pain in the first place has taught me is learning the signs and when I need to exercise and when I need to rest and when I need to sit and when I need to stop sitting.
Mm. I mean, that sounds like the stuff that's in all the ancient Zen stories. Like, you know, some monk says, "What is enlightenment?" And the teacher says, when it hurts, stop doing it. And when it feels good, keep doing it. And when you're hungry, eat something. And when you're cold, put a blanket on. That this is kind of what I meant about the householder thing is there's a teacher and a student in each of us, and they both know what to do.
Yeah.
It's when they're not talking to each other that it feels like we don't know what to do.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's talk about your teachers.
My teachers are largely outside of me these days, and it's really been an accelerator of my practice to have such chaos in my life, and that has been the thing that's been most surprising to me about having any kids, but especially two kids, is like the more crazy things have gotten, the more I'm hesitant to use the word progress, but maybe it is fair to say the better I feel I'm doing. And I mean that in sort of a health way, like better or worse, not in terms of improvement or getting or some kind of performance, but actually like healthier or less healthy. I feel like maybe the times that I've tried to sort of have a monastic solitary existence early in my 20s and meditate all the time and do nothing but concentrate on my spiritual development have been some of the least healthy times.
Oh, really?
And this is the most, only because there's so much more to consider than just myself and what's happening to me.
Well, what's the difference? Like, when you're focusing on yourself as opposed to your wife and children, what happens?
I do have this very long solitary sit, and in the mornings, that's my time to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've set it up that way kind of because it's the only time I can control in a day in this house is when everyone's asleep. And so I take that time to sort of prepare myself. And actually, the more the months go by, the more I realize that I'm really physically preparing myself more than mentally preparing myself. It's not like the situation gets any more clear to me in any kind of rational or intellectual way, or that my what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. I don't decide like I'm going to be a good dad today in the course of that time. It's really that I'm like getting my body breathing proper in the proper Zen manner. And then the muscle memory of that is what propels me through the day. And also what completely consists of the Zen practice of doing all the other stuff is that the breath is really there for me. And it's because I establish it at that time in the morning. And so the difference between that and what I was doing when I was in my early 20s, kind of first learning to meditate, is that I thought the meditation was the end goal of what I was doing at the time. It's like the more I meditate, the more I meditate. And so obviously the more I meditate, the more of a meditator I am or something like that. And there's still so many I's in that, in that way of thinking. There's so much me focus. Whereas this time is like this morning time that I sit before my family wakes up. I mean, it counts, the buzzword, it would be self-care. Like, yes, there is a self-care aspect to this practice that I'm doing, but it's not just that I'm caring for myself as an isolated being. I'm taking care of my family in advance,
Yeah.
And myself is not just this body and this perspective once they come downstairs. It's all of us now. Myself is my house. Myself is everything that has to happen today. And I'm part of that action and inseparable from it. And it is a kind of transcendence of myself but it transcendence in a very ordinary way. It's not some kind of like mind-blowing enlightenment experience. It's just that being myself is inseparable from doing the stuff, and that is or even being with the person, being with one kid at a time or both kids at a time when my wife's doing something, or being with all four of us together, or as rare as it is these days, being together with my wife for the 12 seconds that we get to be in each other's presence alone a day until bedtime. And that feels like so much more of an expansive self. And it's all tied together by this ability to breathe and keep practicing. So, it's true on some level that my family are my Zen teachers, but it's also true on a very real level that they are me, that they're my practice. And I'm practicing in their presence. I'm practicing as their presence. I'm practicing as presence with them. And so it doesn't always, obviously, just like in any sitting practice, thoughts are arising all day long of like, I hate this, like this is terrible. I feel very bad. I want this to stop. But it's not the same as pain in my legs, let alone pain in your legs. I mean, it's not something, first of all, that I can fix by adjusting. I know that's not entirely true, actually. I guess like changes to the schedule, asking for help. That's how you change it if it's not working. But it requires this, and actually, yeah, I guess it requires the same kind of compassion for yourself to not just be like tortured washing dishes, but to ask for help. It's hard to ask a 2-year-old for help, but I do it all day. I ask her to help me. And, I hope that what I'm teaching her is that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
Not so much that like I need her to do stuff.
Right. Not chores, but like that you're helping people.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that sounds like it's working for me. If I'm already having this sort of relationship to it where, taking care of each other is why we're doing things. I don't know. Maybe I should be more concrete about like what's actually happening. Like there's so much, there's so many rituals. This is one of the interesting things. It's maybe not surprising given that, we come from a culture that has lots of little rituals, kind of lots of little householder rituals for everyday things. There's Jewish blessings for washing your hands. There's Jewish blessings for going to the bathroom. Every bite of food has kind of its own different blessing. You say different blessings over the food depending on what kind of food you're eating. You say blessing after you eat food. We don't have a super rigorous practice like this, but there are all these little mindful ritual ways of living that we've practiced before, and it maybe it's not surprising that we've come up with our own in our family. But this might also just be how it is, that like a 2-year-old needs a certain structure and a 4-month-old also needs a certain structure. And so there are all these passages through time to wake up, time to get out of bed, time to get dressed, time to brush your teeth, time to pick out your clothes. And each one of these can be viewed as a challenge, as like a hoop to jump through or a battle to fight even sometimes. But there's also a quality to them that's just like minutes in Zazen. It's like you have to get through 1 minute to get through the next minute to get through the next minute. Like that's all the minutes are, is just like gates for the present moment to pass through. And so it has this rhythm and this structure that's known, and it also breaks out of the structure all the time because one of us, whether it's a kid or an adult, can't or won't hold the structure together, and something needs to be brought back in. The presence needs to be gathered back up so that we can continue through the gates of the day. And it feels like a team sometimes, but it also feels like almost one entity sometimes. It's just like the temperature, and that's definitely also true when things are going wrong, like when somebody's losing their mind, everybody's going to lose their mind pretty quickly. And so it has this sort of group mind quality to it. And the best you can do is bring your own calm and presence to the situation. And it works in ways that are almost hard to explain sometimes. I mean, like, why does my baby daughter, who doesn't understand anything I'm saying to her, calm down when I am calm? And even if I look calm but I'm not calm inside, she doesn't. What level is this communication happening on? And the more it works, the less I try to explain it, because it's that ineffable Zen thing where the teacher and the student and all of us know what to do.
I mean, sometimes I think that, you have this actual relationship with, your child, that if you get upset, then she might get upset, or if you're calm, she might get calm. And I think that it's kind of the same inwardly too, or we're kind of like, we can kind of affect our own feelings by how we react to things. And I see that with my husband too. If one of us is upset, it is going to be more likely that the other person's upset. And I never thought about that as like a family thing, but of course that it happens in the exact same way. So you just have more people who are reflecting each other's emotions back at each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing I've definitely learned, even from when the kids were, from the baby who's still a baby and from the 2-year-old who was a baby not that long ago, emotions don't really change in a way that there's like kid emotions and adult emotions. The thing that's hard about communicating with the 2-year-old is the mismatch between her language or thinking and her emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a sense in which it was almost easier to communicate with her when she was 1 than when she's 2.
Because she knew less words.
Yeah. And she didn't try to explain what was happening. She just showed us. And, I think we adults, I think it's good that you brought up, marital relationships as a Zen practice, brought that into this conversation too. I think we screw that up for each other all the time by talking when we should be feeling, or thinking when we should be feeling. I'm speaking about me and my wife, and I don't want to make it sound like it's universal, but we both do it. We both try to use words to tell each other what's happening, when clearly there's something else happening that's something that happens to a 4-month-old, and that we see the 4-month-old going through all the time, and we figure out intuitively what to do, but we don't give ourselves the opportunity to do that with each other, because the person who's upset comes up with some complicated explanation that you have to solve as a intellectual puzzle of some kind.
That is true. And I'm the person in the relationship that's always trying to solve it like an intellectual puzzle. Like you have to find the source, and then you have to find a way to fix that thing. And sometimes you are just hungry.
Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web ataszc.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.